Yo, good morning.
Good morning. Different time on office hours.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, it's different. I'm not used to being awake and moving this early in the morning. I mean, moving, I think really well. I have my best thoughts early in the morning.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
often, if I have something that I'm struggling to think through or whatever, I know if I wake up when I wake up at say like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, or as soon as I wake up, the ideas just come to me almost
That when they're
subconsciously.
like most accessible to you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Got it.
but I have hard
Hmm.
but I'm not it's not easy to get moving in the morning. Unless I'm
Hmm.
playing golf. If I'm
Then you're
golfing,
up.
I don't got it, man. Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, I wasn't always a morning person. I wouldn't, I feel like as I got older, I definitely have been like more like gym mornings, getting up, working out, and like getting the day started. Didn't do that this morning, but to start it off with a podcast is even better.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so listen. Uh I think Jeff might have we might have a few questions. We didn't. I'm sure we had a lot of stuff in the stream yesterday. It's like I don't know. Yesterday was an interesting class. I didn't. What
mhm.
happened? We I was kind of thinking through the class. I had one idea for something, and then it just at the late morning I realized, hang on, I really can't do that, and so I switched gears. But uh,
Can you not talk about that? Like
Yeah,
what
no,
you
it's another
switched
I think I'm
from
gonna
or
do it tomorrow. Yeah. So
oh, okay.
it'll be tomorrow's
Okay.
class. But what happened was we lost electricity here with that storm. And and at the last minute, like I saw that the clouds were rolling in, we could see them, and there was lightning. And for whatever reason, we seem to lose electricity a fair amount here in this part of town where we are when there's lightning and so on. And
Was it
so
was it quick, just like on and off? Or did
Yeah, it
you
went
lose
on
it
and
for a
off,
little
but
bit?
then it went off. But what happened was
Right.
I like realized that my the the slides that I was putting together, all I have my notes and my slides, and I'm kind of going through everything. They weren't saving to the cloud because I hadn't opened Dropbox in the right way. So I like quickly opened it, and it was started saving, and then I
And
and
then
then boom, we lost everything. And so I didn't know. Well, this was an hour and a half before class, and I wasn't.
right.
I needed one more hour to really just pull the class
I
together,
can. Yep.
man. But then I popped
Yep.
my
That's
yeah.
it's tough. Like I saw you didn't even have your printed out piece of paper, I noticed
Mm.
yesterday. You
No,
usually
I
have
had to
that.
just throw some thoughts together. Yeah, because our printer wasn't working, and I. So anyway, I uh, opened my laptop and I connected to my phone, right, as a hotspot to see. Hopefully, those slides were up on the cloud, and thankfully they were, man, and I was able to pull them down. But man, otherwise, it would have been fine. I mean, I can go in and do anything, but it's not,
Mhm.
it's not the same. But it was a tough class because once we got into Ukraine, which is what I wanted to do, because I had this student from Russia there in class.
Yep.
He's a uh, not an
Greg.
exchange student and not living here. Yeah, Gregory.
Yep. Hmm.
And then the other two students, one from Russia, one from Ukraine. I I didn't want to put him on the spot in such a way. Like that wasn't my intention to do what actually happened, and so I was a little bit
And,
thrown off by that.
and wait, so what happened? What did you see that happened?
Well, we just
Because
got into the place where they had to, like, they were really like weighing in more on the conflict and as a political
Mhm.
conflict, and not
Right.
not talking about enemies and making of enemies. And it's a very subtle thing, the sociology of the creation of enemies, right? And so I have to kind of keep steering the the conversation back in that direction. But it was hard, you know, because I also wanted to talk about. I'm happy to talk about the conflict, but I didn't want to put them on the spot. You know, it's too complicated to do that. And you know,
Mhm.
it's very simple, man. Like the two women were saying, like, look, man, people are dying in war. I can't support war. Like I feel the same way, obviously. But
And you were like talking about the soul. Then it sounded like you were trying to give the perspective of some of the soldiers, like, hey, some of them don't have a choice,
yeah,
or in ways. Because I remember that part of the class,
yeah.
specifically because I was in the back, watching, but
Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah.
yeah, I saw for me, I saw it sounded like you were trying to like hold up the position, some of the position that isn't all the most talked about or like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
most supported,
yeah,
is like what
yeah.
I saw you trying to do, especially when speaking to about the Russian soldiers, and that
Yeah.
if you remember what I'm talking about.
Yep, yep,
But
exactly. Yeah.
mhm,
You know, and yeah, that's thanks for remembering that. Yeah. And that's difficult for me, right? Because I can't like I don't want to come off being like, oh yeah, I support the soul. I don't support the soul. I don't
right,
support war. I don't support the soldiers. But I'm trying to speak as a sociologist to
right.
try to understand what happens. What happens to human beings in these moments? You know, why do we do this? Why do we take sides? Why do we, you know? So that's much more really can we see that? Can we make a sociological observation? But when that observation comes at the when it also includes at some level having to accept or appearing to accept a certain amount of violence, then that's really difficult for people to do, myself included. Yeah.
That's it.
Hey,
So when it comes to appeal, oh, go ahead.
what's that?
Do you have
Say that.
this when you said? Can you say more on like when it appears that you have to accept more violence? Like what part of that um
Well,
class yesterday were you are you speaking
yeah,
to that?
yeah. Hey, by the way, I just want to make note that opinionated Matt has entered the chat. So,
What's up, opinionated
yeah,
Matt?
all the way from Seoul. I guess, yeah, because for Matt, it's 11:20. So, at night. Yeah. And so I think that the thing is first, like I mean, I'm not about there's war that comes as as a point of defense, right? And it's like, look, you got to defend yourself from these other aggressors, right? But war, the aggressors are so often people who have been supported by other people who have economic and political interests and their aggression, like so the weapons manufacturers, I think about the military industrial complex. It's like a huge industry of war that the world has invested a great deal of our industrial manufacturing power into which the world has invested a great deal of industrial manufacturing power. How about like that? So we make these factories and we churn out these weapons, and they're more and more advanced. And and because we make them, you got to sell them. I mean, if you're not selling your weapons, you're not making a profit. And if people aren't using the weapons, you can sell more weapons. So you got to get people to use them. You know, this is the irony of it, right? It's kind of like if cars, we probably could build cars. There are many things that we could build that could last for a long, long time, much as we used to with many products. But when we make things that they're going to last a certain amount of time, like a refrigerator or
Right.
a washing machine or a toaster, and that's good. You can make another one and just keep selling in perpetuity. Well, weapons of war are like that. I mean, you got it.
Not made
Yeah,
they're like
people have.
not made for longevity, like
Yeah,
weapons.
yeah. No, they're
Right.
not made at all. If I can sell you a weapon and I know you're going to use it tomorrow, then the day after tomorrow I can sell you another one. And
Right.
and we have these weapons manufacturers that they don't give a damn about. Well, I'm sure, of course, there's a certain moral complexity to it, but well, when you think about all of these, right now in Sudan and in the Congo and the DRC and all over, like, dude, these people are getting weapons. Where they in Mexico, the cartels, where are they getting weapons from? So people are selling them, and then people are selling them on the black market and selling them in ways that are really problematic. And
Right.
so for me to say, look, I got to put myself in the shoes of these Russian soldiers, da da da, but I know that they're being pushed forward and supported by just a really dark cloud of the worst side of capitalism, you know. So that's
And yeah,
problematic for me. Like I have a really,
right,
yeah,
right.
struggle with
And
that.
I guess it sounded like to me like what part do like the soldiers uh play in that? Like
Yeah,
in terms
yeah,
like how much responsibility do they have? It
yeah.
sounded like that's where part of the class was going for a moment. Like, what
That's what.
responsibility do the soldiers have in this?
Yeah, that's what
Um,
both of the women who were volunteers were saying, and I'm like, yeah, no, what part do they have? I didn't let that air out as much as I
mm,
wanted to, because it was really hard to. It's hard to try to make three different points at the same time, but they made the points. Like, yeah, but people have a responsibility. you know I mean, but
that's
in
so
Russia,
hard. Yeah,
it's
so
hard, man. And in Russia,
s-
you can resist. You can be like,
and go
hey,
to
I'm not
prison or
going. Yeah, people have left the country. What are you going to do? You're going to leave? Like, what if you don't have
yeah,
means to leave? What if you have a family there and, like, you can't just get up and you know go to Turkey or Poland or wherever, Kazakhstan or Tajikistan or something. Where are you going to go? So that's not so easy. And many people they left because they didn't want to be drafted, but, like, they're stuck. Like,
yeah,
you don't have money. I mean, it's like, people have this idea. There's a lot of fundraisers, and we're involved, like, helping people to get out of Gaza because their lives are in danger. So many Palestinians, and we helped one a Palestinian, a man and his family who used to work for us, and but he went to Egypt. But okay, you get out, that's fine, but you got to live, right? But he was very lucky because we have somebody else through another person that used to work for us. They're sponsoring his family. Uh, so
that was the story you told, right?
no, well, yeah, a
It's
while back,
okay,
yeah,
right,
that's right, yeah. So
good,
anyway,
yeah,
that's the piece about. I sometimes I have the fear that I come off as, like, amoral, that I'm not
mm,
holding
mm,
on to um, some of these real deeply morally troubling issues, like what Russian soldiers are doing in Ukraine, and you
right,
know,
right. And what like I wouldn't assume that all Russian soldiers are, out there. Like part of me wants to assume and think that there are Russian soldiers that are out there that are trying to like help civilians get out of the way,
for sure,
and
oh, for
right,
sure, that's war.
and I just
That's war.
yeah,
Look, soldiers. It's like police, soldiers and police, right? Professor. It doesn't matter. People are human beings, and people don't want certain things weighing on their conscience. And
yeah,
so,
right,
most people are not that. Most of us are not that different from the rest of us, so to speak.
yep,
And so,
yeah,
most people are willing to really do what they imagine would be the right thing if they were in that other position. But at the same time, man, soldiers do some really war really takes over people's psyches and minds and so on, and has a way of really clouding people's judgment and turning people into to people that they themselves would not have recognized a year prior. You know,
Right.
this we know. You know, there's a this book that I used to use in my intro class when I talked about war. It's called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning by this guy, Chris Hedges. It's just, he was a journalist for the New York Times and war correspondent. Wow, man, it was just oh sorry, it's just so intense. And during the, you know, 15 to 25 years ago, in the first Persian Gulf War and then the war in Iraq, I was doing a lot of readings of biographies and so on of soldiers. It's just,
Wow.
yeah, war can do some nasty
Wow.
things to people, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
What
the
and
same is true for Russians. So I'm not, and same is true
right.
for Ukrainians, right? So I'm not,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm. Hmm. And
unaware
so
of
you
that.
got to like essentially like dig into the mind of multiple different like case studies of soldiers essentially like through that book.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah. Yeah,
Any
I think
go
that.
ahead.
Hey, Jeff, that question by L, if we're isolated, how would? Yeah, this is actually really interesting. If you, how would somebody's question right? Similar. If you surround yourself with a type of media bubble, how are you going to think that you're wrong when everything is showing you're right? Yeah, well, you you're going to convince yourself. Just like here, you know, when we went through these wars, and it's like support your troops, and how can you not support your troops? And like, yeah, but I happen to have been a person during both of these wars that was really paying attention to what was coming out of Iraq and then out of Afghanistan, like what was coming out from the ground of people in Iraq who were saying, like, hey, listen, this happened and that happened. Really, I happen to be really following that. And, it's like, listen, good humans of the United States who want to wave flags and support our troops, civilians are dying, in large numbers, not just a few here and there. Like because you don't know about it, you don't have any ideas. You're watching these bombs go off on your television set like it's a video game or like it's a movie or something out of Hollywood, and the bombs blow off and they go. But what I'm actually seeing are photos and videos of, because I'm digging for it and because I have certain connections, I'm seeing what the impact of those. Right, I'm
Mhm.
watching, it's just kinda like in Gaza, we're seeing it now more in Gaza, but I'm watching,
Right.
bodies, lifeless bodies being carried out of the rubble that were the of the bombed buildings that were caused by bombs that say "Made in America," "Made in the USA." So, quite, uh, just aware of that. So how do I go
Right.
outside and support my troops? You know what I mean? Like, how do you do
Right.
that when you have this
Right.
kind of thing? So it's kind of,
Right. Is this like kind of similar for like Russia or like even or like Israel, even
yeah, it's similar.
like
Yeah,
this.
like, yeah, that's right. The Russian
Yeah.
people and like, okay, yeah, there's just like, so they're, someone said yesterday, people were being sort of brainwashed. Well, yeah, Americans were brainwashed too. If we're going to call it that, you can call it that, you know,
Right.
but that's what people do, right?
Um,
We want to feel like we're safe and we want to feel like we're right, especially during war when all those moral ambiguities are everywhere around us. So many moral ambiguities, because that you're killing civilians. Most people who die in modern wars are civilians. So you somewhere in their minds, we know that, right? And so we have to erase that stuff, man. God.
like erase just the fact that civilians are like dying. What
Yeah,
do we
the
have to
thought.
erase exactly?
The thought or the knowledge of that, yeah.
Hmm.
Because I'm gonna wanna feel like this is righteous. So it's like, yeah, it's right. So, the Russians, you can tell the story's very easy to tell that, like, listen, man, NATO just, when the Soviet Union broke up in the West, some certain nation states moved toward NATO, right? That were in the Soviet sphere of influence, like Poland, for example. Um, when that happens, uh, either there's a give and a take. like you don't beat down this is like, you don't beat down the loser to the point at which the loser has, in the way that we, squashed Germany after World War One, and it just led to, helped to lead to so much uh, economic depression, and oh
Like
God,
Germany was very broken after
so
that
broken, man,
point,
and you
right?
just like
Yeah,
step on it and step on it and step on it. Well,
right.
you don't do that,
And
right? So there's a way in which, with the former Soviet Union, and I can make a million arguments about the corruption and all sorts of things, but still, I can also, it doesn't take a lot to make the argument that, yeah, I know that you just that that the West overstepped in Ukraine, and it doesn't take a lot. And so for Russians, that means you got a whole nation of people that are going like, yeah, it feels like that you all overstepped. It's not very difficult to get to that position, to feel so for the Russians to feel like they're defending Mother Russia when they're invading Ukraine, a sovereign state, as you
right.
said yesterday. So yeah.
Because of their like, just so I'm saying this correctly, because of the threat that like Ukraine would join NATO, and so for them
Yeah.
that's the threat,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you
Yeah.
look at that slide that I put up about all the resources in Ukraine.
Right. Yeah.
One of
Yeah.
the bread baskets of Asia. It's just like, come on, man. That it so
That
anyway,
was
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was just eye-opening. I didn't know that they were leaders in those
Yeah.
three different areas. Like it
Yeah.
was like the certain seed oils and then the two
Yeah.
other ones.
Yeah. Rapeseed, which is really important. Yeah. So yeah, so I don't know. I think the thing for me is I try to take many different sides of many different issues. And I'm trying to do my best to be the best college in doing that, to try to be what is really the best type of college professor that I can be,
Right.
put
Right. To
things
really
out
provoke
there.
thought.
Yeah,
Hmm.
provoke thought. Let
Yeah.
students don't really take strong sides one way or another. Let students um
Yeah, I feel like you
try
did
to
a
be.
good job with that yesterday. Despite feeling like you were a little, despite feeling like you weren't as grounded
Yeah.
because of like the whole PowerPoint thing. I think you did a good job, especially bring. It sounded like holding Gregory's point because there was a lot of like there were strong positions from
Yeah.
the two other students,
Yeah, which
you
I
know.
support, and I support I can support those
Right.
positions very easily. But the difference is that uh, the difference is that Gregory's in a little bit different position because he's a student here. I got him on YouTube talking about the war, and like, dude, if he says the wrong thing, like he's going to be in trouble. There's certain things that he just is going to be in trouble. So it's like, yeah, I'm not going to throw him.
What's the extent to like what could happen? If like
He
getting in trouble.
Yeah, he gets called in. They revoke his visa to travel again. They make it difficult for him to travel. Yeah, like
Wow.
this kind of thing.
Wow.
So
Right.
he
Right.
gets, yeah. I mean, any number of things, right? Not saying that he was making stuff up at the same
Right.
time. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, like, I'm really quite aware of. I'm not gonna hold him up against the wall like that. I can't do that. I don't do that with my Saudi students. I don't talk about Khashoggi. I don't getting like chopped up into, in the embassy in in Turkey. There are all sorts of things
Hey,
I don't talk about with certain students. I'm just
yeah,
like, yeah, I'm gonna let that fly.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay. You referenced some things that I wasn't sure what you were talking. Shogi? I'm not sure what shogi is.
Khashoggi, yeah, he's the journalist
Khashoggi.
who was critiquing the Saudis forever, and they murdered him, man. Yeah, yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Wow. Was he a resident of Saudi or was he just
No, he was an expat, and they lured him into the embassy and they killed him. You know,
wow.
so
Be because he was
I mean,
reporting
who's
on Saudis
they?
and
The special services of the Saudi government. That's just
right.
widely accepted. I don't have to. It's not even. So anyway, Wayne, I want to go back to Patrick. Do you think that NATO is an excuse to expand to be the USSR again? No, I think the USSR will never be able to expand beyond Ukraine, and even that's a tough call, right? As Putin doesn't want it. It's too crazy. It's just be too much. First off, the Russian economy could not sustain any more expansion. It can hardly sustain the war in Ukraine. It's just very costly, man. It's cost a lot of lives and a lot of resources and a lot of goodwill on the part of there's 40%. Well, outside of the big cities, the Russians really support the war, but the more educated Russians are like, what the heck, and in a very large segment of the not more educated, more metropolitan Russians are just, what the hell are you doing? They're not so tied to the USSR in the way that many people in rural areas are. So the
How
idea of
come
the
though?
USSR, when Russia was one of the great global powers, well, it's still an important global power, but it was different then.
But is that just like a consistent finding? Like, so you're just saying those that are more rural or are just more
Yes,
nationalistic and more connected to USSR?
His intense
But
support comes from certain sectors of the population,
right.
which is, of course, true everywhere with every politician. But
Okay, and I was gonna, is that consistent? Like, let's say like rural regions are more nationalistic, just like
yeah,
across countries, or is that specific to,
yeah, I think they tend
Russia?
to
Okay,
be little less
right,
metropolitan, a little less. For example, when we were in Russia, again, we were only in St. Petersburg, but we were there for a couple of weeks, and we met lots and lots of academics and at university. We gave a lot of talks at universities and different institutes, and and then met lots of people, and yeah, they were all anti-Putin, man. I mean, these are all like thinking, educated people. There was not a single person that we met who had anything positive to say about Putin. And we met
right,
with lots of people. They weren't just people on the left. I mean, they're all a wide range of folks. Yeah, nobody
right.
did. They're like, this
And are
guy.
these conversations that they wouldn't have with anybody else,
Yeah.
really, or like they can't really talk about? Like
No, they can, among them.
they can't.
It's
Okay,
yeah, there's, it's like free speech is a thing that from the outside, it always feels far more, it can seem far more
strict,
limited than
limited.
strict,
Yeah.
yeah, than it
Hmm.
actually is in real life, right?
Right,
You talk about like Iran, like wherever you are, whereas Russia, Iran, that's why like Gregory, it's like, yeah, there's a lot that he can say, but just like push don't push too hard, because it's kind of like with me, right? If I just say, I can say a bunch of things, I mean, about a lot of things, but I just don't know which is the one thing that's going to get someone's going to grab onto, and then they're going to run with it, and then it's on Fox News, because they're not going to care about all the other
true.
things that I say. If they need to make a point
Yeah,
about professors and universities, and right now, we're under the microscope, man. So they're looking for people like myself, although they'd rather have somebody at one of the Ivy League schools. But they're looking for people like myself who they can just take some quote, which they've done many times in the past. So like, I'm not thinking it's not going to happen. It could happen. So something I say to you right now, someone can grab onto and they run with it. And then suddenly I'm in hot water, So this is part of an issue that I'm always thinking about, but there's nothing I can do really in the end. Uh, so, um, yeah, yeah, I think Patrick Olcott, what's so, what I think you're right. Like what's so interesting about this is, yeah, it wasn't very long ago that like relations with Russia were getting better. Well, Yeah, that's right, man. They were exchanging lots of things. Yeah. And then they were getting better with Trump, but getting better in a very odd way, man. Like, if you remember back in 2016 when, all the intelligence services in the United States said, like, hey, the Russians were meddling in these elections. And this is quite a problem. Trump won, of course. And then Trump had a meeting with Putin, and he comes out of the meeting and he says, hey, I talked to my friend Vladimir here, and he said they weren't meddling in our elections. So I believe him. He's my friend. I mean, essentially, I think it's verbatim basically what he said. Like, why would he lie to me? And I'm like, holy shit. That was a moment when I just was beyond my brain. That was one of the early times when my brain exploded, that we've got a president who tells his entire intelligence services at every level that, like, the the enemy, right, told me that they didn't get involved in the elections, and I believe him over you. And that Trump's supporters were like, yeah, Vladimir's a nice guy. I trust Trump. I love Vladimir. I love Putin. This kind of thing. And I'm like, oh my God, you were the same people who hated Russia, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years earlier. Like, oh my God. 1 year earlier, 1 month earlier, like most of these people would have said, oh my God, yeah, Russia, you can't trust them. And so this is, kind of what I was getting at yesterday in part of, like, human beings will just follow their leaders. And that's why it's so incumbent or important for leaders to be honest and serious and thoughtful about who they are and what they are, and take responsibility for their for what they say. Now people say the same thing about professors, right? Well, students, they follow professors, and so professors have to be really careful about what they say in the classroom. But to some degree, that's true sometimes. But honestly, most of those people forget what it's like to be a student, and you're kind of half listening to most of your professors. So maybe I'm making too much of that, but because I'm a professor, but maybe saying it. I'm saying it because I'm a professor and I see. So, like, I would have thought if I weren't in the classroom, for my whole life, I would think back to my undergraduate days, and I would be thinking, and we lost Elijah, but they're trying to work it out. I would be thinking back to imagining my undergraduate years and my professors to be much more influential than they actually were. Uh, and because, we look back at those of us who have gone to college. Hey, it's our high school. It's the same thing. We look back at high school, we look back at college, our teachers, and they're role models for us, right? I mean, they play a role in the shaping of our consciousness. And even though we don't remember specifically what they said in any one time, in fact, the vast majority of us forget 99.999% of everything that happened in school, starting at kindergarten. We remember how we felt at certain times. And then we tell stories to ourselves about what those feelings were. And so oftentimes, I have students that will tell me, wow, you were so influential to me. And I just think back to those classes and the things we talked about, and just what an impact it had on my life. And I thank you for it, et cetera, this kind of thing. And then I will always, or very often, say, like, okay, what, tell me something. What do you remember specifically? And of course, they never hardly remember anything at all. So it wasn't the specifics of what was said. It's the Russia shut down the stream. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can. Yeah, maybe so, man. That's Putin. No, I don't think Putin would. Anyway, so listen. So what I was saying was, um, we remember that these times were influential, but we don't necessarily remember the specifics of what people say. And so therefore the people who, have this idea that it's really important for professors to be really careful about what they say. Well, it's more, it's more just be careful about the kinds of the many different ways you influence people. It's often not just with your words. And so I'm trying to be very mindful of that. But it's also true of, politicians, man. Politicians can sway a people. Right now I'm concerned that, that we talked about it last week in office hours. Just there's a lot of stuff happening that's very kind of troubling. Not just here. Oh, there you are. Is your computer shut down, bro? Oh, you're off. All right. Yeah, I'm watching Hungary. I'm watching so many places, and this is this, but this is we're in a period of reinvigorated nationalism. And so what Trump's doing with tariffs and so on is just some kind of indication of that. It's a representation of the return to nationalism. So it's not he's not acting on his own. It's nationalism is in the air and it's in the water. And so all the nations, we're trying to readjust. It's like the global economic and political system is reorienting and restructuring itself away from this kind of neoliberalism of extreme free market capitalism that we've seen for the past 30 years. And we're people are trying to really get hold of things. And it makes sense that would happen. Of course it's going to happen. So that's kind of you have to see it, we have to sort of see it from these different perspectives. A friend of mine says we have to just keep trying on new articles of clothing to try to feel and see and observe what's going on in these different ways. So, yeah, like a rat. So like not to get not to get too freaked out by it. Well, you can get freaked out by it, but understand that it's bigger than any single individual. So whether it's Viktor Orban in Hungary or Brexit in the UK or Trump or whoever, it's all part of and my thoughts on Sudan is you're gonna do a class on this, but Sudan has unfortunately been stuck in this period of breakdown for several decades now, and it's really sad, and it's sad that this is these arms, the military arms, these weapons exporters around the world, how these weapons get there, it's just pure evil at some fundamental level. And if you track it, there are all sorts of things that you can read and you can study about arms exports. And we know a great deal, and we track and we understand and we know who's doing it and the profits they're making from it. So, Jeff, what's going on, man? We don't have audio from Jeff either. So, Jeff, we're running the stream a little bit differently today because Jeff is actually in Pond these past few days. If you watched class yesterday, he's here. And so he's running the stream differently out of Pond. And so not how we typically run it. And so there are all sorts of things that can kind of get in the way of that, apparently. So I don't know what they are. But let me just there's Elijah back. Well, I can't hear you, man.
We're trying to figure it out. I guess there's like a campus-wide outage because of the storm. I guess that's what,
yeah.
Is that what it is, Jeff?
Yeah. AZ, human population is like an organism and somewhat predictable. Yeah, predictable, and it's predictable mostly in that it's like it's a system, and systems want to reproduce themselves. That fundamentally, systems want to reproduce themselves. They don't want to change. And so when some foreign something happens inside that system, just like the body, like a cancer cells or something, we disrupt it all. But systems want stability, and they want to, it's just like the car, airplane, whatever it is, like they want stability. They want to just hum along really, really smoothly and really well. And that's all systems are like that. But there are all sorts of reasons for disruptions. And then then things become less predictable. Yeah. 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 We thought that the Lord of Arms dealer for Brittany Griner. Yeah. That was pretty sad, man. But to her, I mean, for her, it was just a really sad mistake that she took this bag with her that had her vape pen in it. It's like, man, it wasn't like she wasn't trying to sneak cannabis or hash oil or dab or whatever you call it. She wasn't trying to sneak it into Russia when she went, but that's kind of what happened. And then you got to deal with that, man. It's unfortunate, but anyway, yeah, this is the dark side. When I came of age in my early 20s, and I first kind of discovered the nefarious activities of around me by kind of studying a lot of the CIA and U.S. military and so on in Latin America. And that's where I first really discovered, like, oh my God, there's a lot of nasty things that happen in the world. So my problem is when I'm in my class with students and I'm talking, about the military or the government or different things, and it sounds like I don't lead with the nefarious activities. So like yesterday, I'm not leading with the nefarious activities. Like I can talk about Putin and like the assassination, like how many people have accidentally fallen out of hotel rooms on the 20th floor, who happen to just be critics of Putin and the Russian, current administration. Like that's quite fascinating, so I don't lead with that stuff, but I could. And so I get I feel some kind of way. And well, Ian, you say war is necessary but never moral. But part of war, once we built in World War II, the world, the West certainly, and Russia built what is the beginning of the military industrial complex, because we had to gear up for war to fight Germany in the Axis powers. We had to gear up in just a matter of months, man. It was so fast, months. And then over the course of a year or so, they were just taking over factories and retooling factories to make military weapons. And there's so much money in that. There was so much money in that weaponry. And because, the U.S. government, with taxpayers, we were going to pay whatever we had to pay. So that's where we started with cost plus financing. It's like, look, whatever it costs plus the profit that you're going to make. So charge us the cost of it, and then we're going to include the profits, cost plus. And then the military weapons producers have sort of operating on that ever since then. And once all of these billions, the money was made there, you get to the late 1940s, and then then we're off to another war, and the Korean War, and then we're off continuing to build our bases, and there's so much money, so much. And then we're in the Vietnam War. It's just another war that we get into, and you wonder, why did we get into? Well, in part we got into because the arms producers are sort of working back channels inside of the government to get people to go to war, man, and or let us sell our weapons out here in other places in the world, and then the weapons get used against us, and then all sorts of stuff. There's so much nefarious activity. So when you say war is necessary, it's like, well, you have to also include war is necessary for the arms producers to make a profit, and they're going to just keep pushing for more and more fighting, more conflict, more, that's just what's going on around the world. And you can't, so I can never say that war is necessary, because as long as you have so many weapons out there, it's like we don't know that war is it's actually not necessary. We could solve our our struggles in lots of other ways. I mean, human beings are pretty amazing in that. We could bring back gladiators. You know, when you have, the Russians have everybody has their gladiators. They go in the ring and then we decide who wins. We could do that. But but if you say necessary, you can't say that without looking at all of the back channel activities that are taking place in the economic and political arenas that keep it going, that keep us thinking that it's necessary or inevitable. Yeah. Bro, you're back. No, you're not really back. I can't hear you. And you're skipping. You're lagging. Yeah. Yeah. James Webb Telescope found life on another planet. Wait, what did the Dylan, what did it find? Because I don't, yeah. Well, then you have the issue of the religion-based reasons for war dating back to the dawn of time, so to speak, right? Yeah, well, in the end, I suppose human beings are going to be fighting with one another, okay? Because human beings, we're Homo sapiens are like, we're on the move, and people are traveling, they're moving, they're engaging, and most of human history is human beings living in hunter-gathering clans and small groups, small clans. We're going to encounter other people, and we're going to fight over things, just like people today. You get on YouTube and you watch videos of people fighting over a parking spot in a parking lot, that kind of stupid stuff, right? So like people are going to fight, and mostly you can keep those battles kind of small. And in hunting and gathering clans, the fights they're tiny little skirmishes, and they mostly work themselves out, because you can't have a full-scale war, because you're not going to survive if you do that. And so you can't go all out. And so there are lots of places, we have a lot of examples in hunter-gatherer clans where there's a very limited war. Like there's a grievance, and then you got to resolve the grievance, because you have to get rid of it. You have to put it in the past. You can't have something that goes on for a long period of time. It's just really dangerous to the stability of your own clan. And when the other clans around you are unstable, because it just creates problems. You need stability. Like, in our neighborhoods, I want my neighbors' households to be as stable as my household. Like, you just want that, because it means that I'm safer and so on in the long term. So human societies are built around the quest for stability, not the quest for war. It's not the case. So there's a lot of people that are like, no, people have always been violent and aggressive, and we're going to take other people's things if we can. That's absolutely not true. The anthropologists are very, very clear that is not the case, and we haven't seen that except in very rare instances. Yeah, and even then, it's like contained. So people have to people fight mostly to rebalance. But then once people started to establish landed social systems and be stuck in place, and we moved toward more agrarian or agricultural production, instead of scavenging and foraging for food, then it's but then you got to protect. You got to protect what you have, because you're going to produce, and you're going to create. You're going to have things that are stuck in one place. My food source isn't moving around us. My food source is right here, and so I got to protect the food source, right? And so there's a lot of opportunity for, just little tiny, the small ways in which tiny conflicts, let's say, in that protection. And then there's always going to be a few people leaders or clans or something, who are just going to want more. I mean, that's the kind of the nature of it. I mean, there's always going to be a few there, and mostly, human beings are pretty good at containing those people. You might think that that's not true because, you read history and you can pick out whether it's Genghis Khan or whoever, like the people that we were not able to contain. But the fact is, or the expansion of the Ottoman Empire and so on. But the fact is that for most of human history in most places, all of the greed and this tendency to be willing to go out and take what other people's have has been contained. Most human history throughout most areas of the planet has been pretty stable. Human beings have mostly helped one another. Okay. So, we talk about war in our history books and so on because, I don't know, they're just certain markers and all. Well, we talk about them because they're exceptional. So it's just like kind of the news, the headlines. And so there we go. I guess that kind of makes it. But in any case, wait, what was I talking about? War. Yeah, war being necessary. So war is, it's not necessary, really. You have to sort of study all the vast majority of humans' life where war isn't happening, and it becomes an exception. Yeah. World literacy at will limit comment. Yeah, I like that. We should Craig Sips. Maybe we should focus on world literacy, and that will limit conflict. Yeah, jaw, not war. Yeah. Just talk to one another. Yeah, yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm trying to grab onto so by the way, so everyone knows, yesterday we had a major outage at Penn State, and not all of the campus, but many parts of campus. And when you have that, we have largely to a great degree, we have these contained computer systems, and when you disrupt those, man, it's just quite problematic. And so they got disrupted, and we're still trying to. I think they're still trying to get things back on track. And so Jeff and Elijah are both in Pond Lab, where the offices are, World in Conversation, and they're trying to kind of get things back going. But for whatever reason, I'm able to still be here, even though they're running the show from Pond Lab. All right. Yeah. All right. So let's see. Let's see what else. Would you say that the bigger the population, the more moral we have to become, and therefore less conflict? That's Ian. Yeah, I would. That's actually a really good question. The larger the population. So I think that it's not more moral. Listen, morality is right and this is the way I see this, right? Morality is about right and wrong. Ethics is good and bad. It's the same. You could say morality, ethic. We can see them as interchangeable. I just make that distinction in my mind because it just helps. But it's good and bad. So to say something is moral, it simply means that something is on the plane of good and bad. This is a hill. I'm not willing to die on this hill, as they say, figuratively speaking, because we say it so often. We say if something is moral, it means like it's good or it's right or it's just, it's moral. But morality, right, and immorality is just the question of being on a spectrum, right? But okay. But do we have to have, with larger populations, do we have to have, I think we have to have more shared agreements the larger a population is about what is good and what is right and what is just for a particular system. I think that is true. You really got to have more people who are willing to, stick their flag onto the same mounds, the same hills, for example. Because when you have large numbers of people who are not doing that, this is quite a problem, which leads me to this thought. As much as I'm really always the optimist about so many different things, I'm recently having a lot of concern and I'm very careful about what I see in social media and when I see in videos like on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. But I have a certain concern that the disagreement or the lack of coherent agreement about moral codes is really growing, and that there's a lot of more and more disagreement, man, that people are acting in ways that are really outside the bounds of what I would call what behavior that is necessary for civil society. And I'm watching things that happen. Today I was just blowing through social media kind of thing, and on Reddit, I subscribe to the golf community because I was looking for stuff about golf. It's interesting, right? And just like so many videos of people fighting with each other on the golf course, right? Like, I think really fighting, man. I mean, like WWE, SmackDown fighting. And I was thinking, damn, man, that just would never happen in a place like Korea, like or Saudi Arabia, or there's so many places, probably Ethiopia. There are places that would never happen ever. And I just think, wow, man, I know I say this a lot, but I'm just wow, just wondering, like, I'm just watching these subtle breakdowns here, and we're still surprisingly, amazingly civil, and we get along quite well in this land that is people from all over the world and all different perspective, and all kind of with the amount of freedom that people cling to. It's freedom, even if it's not real, it's fabricated in their mind. But and by that I mean, like, I'll think that, oh, I'm so free here in the United States and that I'm somehow special, but I can go anywhere in the world and do 99.99% of what I do here in my life here in the US. I can go anywhere else and do it. Almost all of it. So it's an illusion of freedom in a way, right? But it's an illusion that a large segment of the US population clings to and we share. And so somehow it gives meaning to us, but it really is an illusion because you can pretty much do most anything you want here, most anywhere in the world. So, okay. All right. So here, yeah. Yeah. At AZ. Yeah. I mean, look, the Ukrainian government, yeah, they're pushing their own nationalism, which is fine. It makes sense, right? These countries that were underneath, these lands and territories that were underneath the orbit or the umbrella of the Soviet Union, man, when they could get free, they wanted to be free. Poland is far better off today because it's linked to the West in most economic and political indicators. So it's like, yeah, all right, of course you want that, but that makes sense. But if you see this Ukraine conflict from a Russian perspective, not a Putin perspective per se, because Putin, you got to set him aside for a second. Just a Russian perspective, historically speaking, it's like, yeah, I can kind of make sense. I think what happens is, we forget that a lot of times we forget that this kind of shifting back and forth between territories and nations and national borders, this has been happening forever. And certainly in the West, it's been happening for the past many centuries. I mean, we can go back to 800, 900 the year 8 or 900 of the Common Era. And like, you just see it, man. It's just like constantly changing. So it's like, okay, it's going to keep changing. And then you're going to have these wars like in Ukraine. And that's kind of what it is. Yeah. Yeah. Hate and aggression has no place in the public realm. People need to articulate their grievances calmly. Well, listen, I agree with that. But for some reason, like we've got, we're moving and most people do. Most people articulate their grievances very calmly. And that's really important. But some people don't. And we're of course everybody has these cameras here that they can videotape stuff. So kind of it looks like there are a lot more public airing of grievances than there really are because of these cameras, but there still are a lot it's still happening. So, but I mean, I think about this, like, I don't know, any of us just go just match your day, look at your days, day in and day out. How often do you see people in public yelling at each other or beating each other up? Really, how often do you see it? I'm sure not very often. So anyway, that's the thing. I feel like yeah. By the way, Jeff, is there a way you can put Apache podcast quote up about what makes America the free world leader? Can you go back and I don't know if you're able to do that. About 20 comments back. Yeah, there we go. What makes America the free world leader when we have a lot of issues being democratic? Is there another political method that's better? Well, a lot of this, yeah, there are a lot of political methods that work quite well. I mean, if we go with, the Scandinavian countries, they're all smaller nations, so it's a little bit different, but they're all basically more state socialist nations. Well, so are we, by the way. So, I mean, we're struggling with that, but, but the governments are tax base is much higher. Governments are much more involved in collecting money from the people and spending it on behalf of all of the people. So it's like, look, we're going to make sure that the people have great school systems. Universities are basically close to being free. We're going to have daycare when you need it. We're going to make sure that if you get sick, we have healthcare. We take care of you. They're all the roads. We're going to have all these public services that you're going to make for a much better life. We're going to make decisions about cars and bike lanes, and we're just going to we are those of us who are responsible for governing other people. For spending public money, we're going to do our best to spend it on as best we can. We're going to collect a lot of money from you, and we're going to spend it so that we can make our worlds better and make you happier. Well, it's not surprising that, year after year, we come out with the countries in the world where the people are the happiest and most satisfied, or maybe it would be surprising to you, right? To many people, but the countries in the world where people are the happiest and most satisfied are the these countries lead, Denmark and Finland and Sweden and Iceland and Norway, and they're leading the way. And these are all what would be called much more socialist oriented societies. So we're saying, like, yeah, well, the free market is the best. Well, there's free market there, but they actually also control the market. And so, and the best indicator is how happy are your people, and they're much happier than people in the United States on average, right? So it's like, well, then what? How is this the best system? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But like the point being, the best way to measure it is happiness. I'm happy with my economic situation. Yeah, I'm not really happy paying, 52% of my paycheck goes to taxes, right? I'm not really happy about that, but I'm quite well aware of all the services that I get as being a member of this society, and I'm paying all those taxes in, uh, this money into this, and so I really quite appreciate it. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it feels good. Yeah, I like that. So, um, this is the thing, right? Like, I'm not. It's not an argument for state sponsored socialism, but it's like, look, you look around. Like, you can't. We're all we've if any of us who have this idea, it's like, well, you got to go to one of these nations and you have to be there for a few weeks. You got to talk to people. You got to be like, hey, how is it? Now, there's a lot of changes that are taking place, and things are changing pretty quickly in places, in lots of places. But come on, man. I mean, it's just a thing. That's all. I don't know. I look at I just have been looking at this thing about the happiest nations because I'm preparing a talk about this for when I go to Korea next. And Korea is down much lower because Koreans, they're really just they're really struggling. They struggle, but they're not that much lower, but it's lower. And so the question that Koreans always have is like, why are we so unhappy? And I'm like, well, you're not so unhappy, relatively speaking, but you are on average less happy than a lot of these other places. So it's like, well, let's look at it, right? Anyway, these are the questions of life, man. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Patrick, I find the main issue is that stuff is the message in 1,000%. Stop saying free. Break down the cost and okay, yeah, I'm not sure what you're responding to there, so I won't. I currently live here, Ukraine. The people are happy with their political choice. Obviously, not happy with life at the moment. Yeah. No, like it's tough. When I was in Ukraine, when Lori and I were there, what we experienced were people. Well, this was in 2017 or 2018. What we experienced was a population of people on edge, man. It was really just on edge, really. I felt like that for me anyway. We were only in Kyiv, so we didn't. I can't say I experienced Ukraine because I only experienced a very small slice of it, but it really felt like, people on edge, and I understand that, man. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. There is like the older generation. We saw this when we lived in Czech Republic for a few months, and then we went and lived in Poland. This was 20 years ago, but yeah, there's such a divide between the older generations and the younger generations, and people who were, just had very different. Well, the problem with Glasnost and Poland, the problem with the breakdown of the Soviet Union, it just creates a lot of uncertainty, man, which is kind of what's going on here in the United States right now. And so you wonder what's happening with the markets and the banks, big banks, and a lot of folks. Is like there's so much uncertainty, man. And now we've got this person who's just these people, led by Trump, who are making these very rash decisions about things. Just quick, rash. Like, I mean, not even thinking about it. Like you don't just say, you go in and you just start cutting money, laying people off in these federal jobs. You have no idea what they do. You have no idea how important this is. You just come in and within days, you're just going on like, okay, we're going to fire all you people. It's like, wait, what? You have no way of knowing. I mean, this is just absolutely absurd. A big organization, a big corporation is going to cut, 10% of its workforce. They've already been thinking, they're going to be thinking about this for months and months and months. And they're going to be doing careful calculations about, all right, how we, now once we fire all these people and we cut this whole sector of our company out, how are we going to get by? What are we going to do? It's like there's no thought to that. Clearly, because they keep going forward and then backwards, and then they try to go here and then they try to go there. And it's just, so there's so much uncertainty. And the markets are going to just be probably, by the looks of it, they're going to be pretty unstable. They might be unstable for the next 4 years. It's like, oh my God. Yeah. So I don't know. It's crazy. What a very strange. Yeah. If people want certainty. Yeah. Yeah. Kyiv is an old city, man. Yeah. 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 God. Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at some of the comments. It's just like, yeah, what a crazy world. Huh. Well, I'll just accept that it's kind of going to be crazy. Not that I like it. I don't like it, man. Yeah. I personally want some stability, but mostly I have stability. But the truth is, for me anyway, which I don't like. I mean, I'm aware of that I just happen to be in a space and in a position where things are mostly stable, though it may not be. I don't know. Very quickly, things could just be turned on their head for me. So, I don't know. It's I don't know what. I don't know how to make it. All right, listen, man. I don't have. Yeah, Patrick Olcott. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's really what I'm saying. The changes are not, you got to really think out these changes. The world, it's too precarious right now. By the way, there's a really, really good conversation. Hang on, I just want to pull this up. Okay. If I could. So so if you want to hear a good here, I'm going to put it in here. Hang on, I'm typing this in. So this Ezra Klein was a columnist or writer for the New York Times. Really thoughtful guy. He's neither left nor right. It's just beyond that. He's just a really good thinker. So when you're a really good thinker, you're not really left or right. And kind of okay. So anyway, he interviews Tom Friedman. Also a columnist for the New York Times, who's been very much a centrist column. Well, he used to be he leans right a little bit, but from when I first started reading him, really 30 years ago, but he's really quite centrist. And the title is, Tom Friedman is asking, what if we're getting China all wrong? So it's an hour. So you can find this podcast. It's an hour long. Man, it really, just boom, man, really worth listening to. And so the question, Stephen, do I believe Trump's tariffs will have an environmental effect? Well, yeah, everything has an environmental effect. So, yeah, yes, but probably more of an environmental effect than we might imagine, because we have to invest money in very deliberate ways into reducing the human carbon footprint. And if we don't do that deliberately, like, you have to invest money into sort of turning the ship, so to speak, toward reducing the impact carbon emissions. And so, yeah, so the tariffs are going to do that. It's going to push us more toward cost cutting, and we're not thinking far into the future. But anyway, Tom Friedman, really worth that conversation between Ezra Klein and Tom Friedman is really worth listening to. It's mind blowing. It's just worth. That's all I'm going to say. It's worth listening to and imagining that get some things wrong. So they're two really thoughtful people. Friedman's a really, really smart person. So, and so is Ezra Klein. So anyway, that's it. Okay. I did not see Bernie and AOC. I think, there's a lot of things happening. I'm trying to take in as much as I possibly can, but I'm also got a million things going on where I don't have time. I personally don't have time to really listen to too many people. I happened to listen to this particular podcast. It's an hour long as I was going to sleep last night. And then when in the middle of the night, I woke up and I listened to the remaining part of it. But okay. All right, listen, I got to go. I have to go hop in my car and go somewhere. And then we're, tied up all day. So class tomorrow, I think it'll be interesting. I think I think if it goes as I'm thinking, we're going to have an interesting conversation that we should have. So that's it. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Be well. And we will be back. Yeah. Back next time. Thanks, man. Be well, people. See you, Matt. Be well in Korea, my friend. All right. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. All right.